Thank you, Dave.
Always
Happy
good to see you. Always a pleasure.
to ask a few questions about jazz teaching because you are very involved with the association. This is EISG, the International Association of School of Jazz.
Hard to say.
Hard to say. And I would like to have your thoughts about what is the jazz situation in terms of teaching jazz in France. What is your experience here? What did you teach? And what do you think about this?
Well, first of all, I thank you for allowing me to talk to everybody, and I say hello to all the participants. I think it's great that you're having a meeting and you can put everybody in one place that's involved in teaching this music. The short story is that jazz education is really something that came out of the 40s and 50s in America. Some notable places, North Texas State and Berkeley School of Music, of course, everybody knows. And in fact, the impetus for me to form the International Association of Schools of Jazz was that it's so universal, it's being taught in so many countries, and one thing is true, if it's French, English, or German, if you say Duke Ellington, it means the same thing. So I thought that there's, it always seemed to me there's more in common than there is in differences, and jazz is a great vehicle for putting people together. Besides the music and the beauty of this tradition, there's the social interaction that takes place, and that's one of the reasons that we have, this jazz education has grown so much. I think people really want to know what's going on. And it's very interesting because we're here talking on a night that I'm playing with a master from another era, Martial Solal, and how they learned music in that era, which was by playing every night, 3 sets a night, 6 nights a week for year after year after year. And how we learn music, I didn't have formal jazz education, but everybody since me, of course, goes to school. It used to be when you walked into a jam session, you'd say like, "Oh, who are you playing with?" "Oh, I'm playing with Freddie Hubbard." Now it's like, "What school did you go to? Who did you study with?" So we have a change of venues, to put it lightly. But of course, because jazz education now is taking place around the world so much, we have a new situation that we have to discuss. Several challenges I think are very important that should be on the map. Again, whether it's France or Germany or wherever, it's really the same everywhere. So I'm not going to talk necessarily about the French system because I'm not, aware of it. I obviously have done a lot of workshops here and everything, but I think it's more general, and I'm going to address the major issues. I think one thing that has to be discussed is the practicalities of being, I'm going to say jazz musician, but let me just say a musician trying to earn a living in this modern world with what's going on with the business basically evaporating because of the record companies, publicity, everything's online. You don't even have a CD drive in your computer anymore. The CD is like this 78 was. It's almost forgotten. Everything is, streaming and online. And the question is, how responsible are we as educators to provide education for how to make a living in this business? Should a student have just jazz? Should they be equipped with classical music? Should they be able to do beats and stuff, rap beats and everything on the computer? Should they understand the ramifications of tax law and of contracts and of copyright and of publishing? I mean, how much do we have to do to be responsible to the young person to give them a chance to be able to make a living in this music, let alone jazz, just in the music business, because it's changing so much. And some schools in America are very oriented towards practical instruction. Manhattan School of Music, there's a business of music course. You talk about keeping your taxes, keep your receipts. I mean, things like that we have to be aware of. On the other hand, other schools are much more, we don't only teach the art, we're concerned with artistic growth, and let the business be another. That's your affair and your business. So that's an important thing to discuss. Another thing to discuss is the future. And we all, those of us who have children understand this, of course, which is at a certain age, the window is wide open to be influential as to the tastes of the next generation. I did a survey because, I have this classes, we've had 25 years of meetings. And I did a survey, and one question that was in the survey was, at what age did you get the point? The point is, like for me, Coltrane, as you well know. When I saw Coltrane at 15 years old in New York City, it's 1962. That was my epiphany. I didn't know it then. I was 15, 16 years old. That's the age when a young person is most likely to be attracted to something. and to love the mystery of it and to want to know more about it. By the time they get to 19, 20 years old and they go to conservatories, to one of the schools of your participants here, in a certain way the course is already set. We need to get the young people to understand and to appreciate jazz so that there's a future. Otherwise, we're going to be playing for gray hair for the rest of our life. And I'm playing for my audience is basically my age, and that's not a good thing. We have to have young people involved. There are certain countries where there's an emphasis. For example, in England, there's a thing called day school. It's on Saturday morning. And Manhattan School of Music, New England Conservatory, Juilliard in New York City, there's the Saturday morning sessions. They all have different names. And what happens is the teachers, or the regular teachers there, are teaching 12, 13, 14-year-olds how to play. They have a class in their instrument, and then they go to ensemble. 1 o'clock they're done. They go, parents pick them up and they go. And of course, the parents love this because the kids are getting culture. I think it's quite affordable. In the case of Europe, maybe this is something that the state would be involved in, or giving some contributions or whatever, expenses. But of course, it means that the teachers who do this really do it because they love it and they want to see a future for it. It can't be like I get paid for every minute. It has to be voluntary, or some kind of compensation that's reasonable. But to finances to be worked out. But there needs to be something that gets young people involved. I mean, Wynton Marsalis, he does it all the time. They have special programs at Lincoln Center, Duke Ellington for young people, understanding Coltrane, etc. Somebody gets up and talks and plays. You have 13, 14, 15-year-olds there, and they're like, wow, I didn't know this is jazz, I think that's very important. So that's an important thing. And the third thing is, I've kind of alluded to it already, but it's how far do we go in jazz to mix or to look at the other musics? And I'm going to be just very general. Pop music, classical music. Now, of course, the tradition in France is different than the tradition in England or in Scandinavia, and you know that better than I do. But the point is, do we include pop instruction? Do we have a class on Coltrane followed by a class on the Beatles? Are we responsible for understanding this rap music that's going on and how beats are put together and everything? I mean, how much do we put the whole menu together? And how much do we just keep jazz separate as kind of a high level art form, or sophisticated just for experts? I think this is a point of discussion. So those are three aspects, I think, that point to like what's going to be for the future in every country, let alone in your meeting this week. Okay.
Thank you. It's always a question of sequence, and everything you teach about the saxophone is how to learn in a certain sequence, to have appropriate way of playing saxophone. I mean, you have to start about breathing before you touch the keys. For the jazz language, don't you think it would be a danger to teach how to be oriented in this jungle? Is it the goal of the teacher to say to the kids, look, this is the street, and you have to learn the language of the street?
It's a philosophical point. This is what I'm saying. It needs to be discussed. Of course, everybody has their own opinion. And as I said, in America, some schools are known for being more practically oriented. They have courses in business. They have courses in computer. They have courses in keyboard. They have to learn how to, do beats and everything. They also have, G7 flat 5. They also have our language. I mean, I think a good thing is when you have an offering, let's say in France, this young person, 17, 18, whatever the age is from conservatory, says, I'm really interested in this aspect of it. I know that this school in Lyon is known for that kind of approach. There's another school in Nîmes that's known for the other approach. I think the more, the more possibilities, the richer the country is. This meeting is about jazz education in France. If you offer more, I think you involve more students. There could be the absolute pure, maybe just the Paris Conservatory, art for art's sake, highest level, sophisticated, not one thought about practical stuff. Just put on a concert, write an orchestra piece, learn Coltrane backwards, no problem. And then another school could have, like, we have some of that, of course, but we also have courses in the business of music, in how to put together a studio, how to get work, how to handle Facebook. I mean, the realities of being in the real world. I think if there's there's room for all of that. It's just a matter of who and what and where it would be. I don't think you can do everything, but it can be. It should be something to be discussed. In our school, we're going to emphasize this point. Is everybody on board? Are we okay? Let's go. Let's make a syllabus that fits this. Let's not be concerned about the other school. They're doing what they do. So it doesn't become competitive. It becomes like it's a menu. I can have column A or column B, and it's all available. See, I think that if we don't reflect the real world, we're in serious trouble, because in this world, making a living in this music is extremely difficult, and we have to think about what it would be like at 26 years old, 25 years old, to be out of conservatory with a degree and everything. Where do you start teaching? Well, teaching, you know what, is getting pretty crowded too.
Sure.
Because everybody's looking for a gig, GIG, because we have a work problem because there's not a lot of places to perform. I mean, I don't know Paris how it is, but New York City, which is center of jazz, more jazz musicians per square inch than anywhere else in the world. They're playing for the door. They're playing for a percentage of the door. They're paying to play outside of the Village Vanguard and Birdland and all the great big places that have stars. Everything below that is basically nobody's getting paid. Now that's at 25 years old. I guess that's okay, but not at 35. So I think it's a little bit of I think it's our responsibility to make at least address the issue and have some kind of reference to it in the syllabus, not just pure music, but a little bit of the reality of the real world.
Mm. We see that in France, it's the Pascal Anquetil situation, and he wrote this. You can see that a lot, all the jazz scene and all the cats, they are polyactive. I mean, they are arranging music, they are teaching, they are doing a lot of different.
You have to do a lot.
Yes.
You have to wear many hats.
But the thing is that the students know this, and they are already polyactive.
Great.
But don't you think at some point it could interfere
Yes.
with the real knowledge of music?
You have to have a balance, and it has to be done right. And I don't know if it's 50-50 or 75-25, but there should be some kind of instruction in this area. Just saying it's being done, I'm very glad, as long as it's being done. I just want it that the student, if he wants to have a practical approach to getting out in the real world, once he's done with the cocoon, school is a cocoon. You know where you're going to be between September and June. I'm being very general. Once you're out of school, you have your own program, your own schedule. In America, you have thousands of dollars that you probably owe for loans because we don't have education paid for. You have real, these young people that come out of Manhattan School of Music, they're the most trained musicians in the world. They're completely ahead of the game. They're way over-equipped. How are they going to make a living? So they teach, but then finding a place for teaching is getting more and more difficult, as we said already. I just think there should be a balance. It's the art, but it's the practicality of being a musician. And we should have some kind of good balance between the two. It shouldn't just be one or the other, in my opinion. This was not true 10 to 15 years ago. It was a different discussion. And of course, the other thing was this: when jazz education started in France, when I was seeing it in the 80s, the people who were teaching it were not always the best musicians on the street. They were guys who taught, because teaching was still considered like, teacher, I guess he can't play. That kind of attitude. And I remember talking to some of your most well-known guys who I've worked with, I don't have to mention names, and say, you should be teaching. How come you're not at the conservatory or this school or somewhere else? Oh, no, we don't do that. We play, we only perform. Like that's it. But the guys who are teaching are not equipped to do what you do. They don't have the information and knowledge. But by the 90s, that changed. And now, the best musicians are teaching too. And of course, there are levels of teachers. There are some really great teachers, and there's some that are just okay. But now you have everybody, in America, all the schools I go to, the people who are teaching everybody can play. So that's over with. So you have the artist in front of you. I'm a 20-year-old student. My teacher can really play. I mean, I heard him play. He's not just teaching, he can play. He might be teaching me, but that doesn't mean he's not a good performer. So this is a very good thing. So that teacher, you're the people who are here, you're the people who made a living somehow and figured this out in your generation, depending on what age we're talking about. So you have already done this. I think you have to impart that knowledge or that experience to the student, besides John Coltrane or Miles Davis. Alongside the art is the practicality Well, how did you make a living, Joe? Well, when I got out of school, I taught. I was a waiter and I drove a taxi for a while, and I accompanied singers because I could play piano good enough. And after a while, I was able to get a gig and get a record out, and now I have a little bit of a career. Oh, great, thank you. Show me how to do it. I think that's the point. Some practical instruction. We say vocational. That's the word we use. Vocation is your work, your line of work. Vocational training, something to do with the real world, getting out there and being a musician and making a living.
So, what do you think about the future of that music and about teaching that music, and also related to the future of the association in ESG? Do you think there will be more school of jazz, more participants, more audience? How do you feel about that?
The audience is a problem. We're having a lot of trouble with the audience. They are growing older because of what I spoke about. The venues are less and less. It's very difficult to be sympathetic with the club owners that we always put, we're always putting them over the fire. Or, the truth is, it's pretty difficult to have a club that features this music. It's just, the audience is, in America, the audience is about, they've done surveys 1%. That's just about 1%. Classical is about 4%. Obviously, pop is 20, 30, whatever. Country music is the biggest in America, actually. Yeah, we have a problem with audience. On the other hand, the developing world, Africa, Asia, they are more and more interested in this. First of all, it's new. When you say Miles Davis in China, they have no idea what that means, what that is. Of course, once they see it, now it's so easy because of the computer. Once they see it and experience it, a certain percentage. Now, again, in China, 1% would be enough to take care of all of us. I'm being very optimistic, but the point is that if you get those people to get interested, they're going to want to know about this. They're not going to worry about making a living and all that. Not at this point. Like jazz education didn't address these issues in the past. But I'm saying they have to address these issues now. This in Eastern Europe or in Asia, and I'm hoping in Africa, it'll be just like curiosity about how this music works. What is this? Just like I'm curious about African music. It's a natural thing to want to know what's going on in another part of the world that you're connected with, in this case with the computer. I think the jazz education thing is going to continue. I don't know how long. It seems to me to be still growing. We still have more applications than ever. The schools are growing. They're adding buildings, etc., etc., in America at least. There seems to be, at a certain level, jazz education is doing very well. Jazz performance is not doing so well. So we have a definite problem, which is the classroom has become the club, which has become the reality that you do your ensemble at a space on Saturday afternoon, and that's ensemble number 1 and ensemble number 2. That's how they perform. That's not a good thing because this music has to be played in front of people. We have to get an audience to pay to hear it, so that we can make a living, and the club owner or the concert promoter can make a living. Otherwise, they can't continue to do this. So we have a problem, and the problem is to address. I think a lot of it is getting young people interested in this music. If you get only 1%, it's worth it because you have the young energy with the tools they have and with their network of friends and so forth. Hey man, you should come and listen to this music. I don't like jazz. I don't. What is that? Come on, hang out a little bit. They come and they see you play, or they see me play. You go, wow, this is pretty interesting. But my father, I always use my father as a reference point. He would say to me, "How do you do it? You have no music in front of you, and if you do, your eyes are closed. You don't talk to each other. There's no conductor. How do you do it?" It's the most basic question. When they see us play, they go like, "How can you just do that in real time without any?" It seems there's no organization. Like we talked about last night with me with Martial at the club. How did it happen? We never played together. It's really magical and mysterious, and that is a natural for people to want to know about. I trust that. I think that's very important. If they're exposed to it, we have to expose them. That's why we got to get the young people on a little bit somehow on in our territory. So I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic, but I am concerned about the aging of the audience and also the support. The last thing is this. the mission of government, there's four missions of government, right? Defense, health, education, and culture. Now, in Europe, after the war, in general, depending on the country, there was an attempt to cover all four areas. Okay, let's take defense off the table because that's another discussion. Health, you get your medical needs paid for. Education, your schooling is paid for, which it still is in Europe to a certain extent. It's changing, but it's different. And culture. If government's responsible for culture, well, actually it is. You know, I can't expect people to sit there and listen to me play the way I play and pay for it. At the beginning, it's the first time they hear it. It's not popular music. We don't make it easy for them. We make it more difficult. Well, that's the art form. That's just Picasso. I mean, he didn't make it easier. He made it more difficult. I mean, that's what we do. The art evolves and it changes. It gets more sophisticated. In some cases, it gets more complicated. Maybe it gets overly complicated. That's another aesthetic discussion. But the point is, the government is responsible to give the people a chance to see this music and to experience it. So part of the function of what this meeting is about is to, of course, have an aggressive campaign ongoing to raise money and funding for this music, whatever that means. Performance of the young people, pay for the venue, record company that the government, like we did with Amianda, with the label Blue, the Amianda was involved with it, etc. I think there has to be a concerted effort to raise monies. We need support. We can't expect jazz to pay for itself. It's not popular music. I mean, it's not fair to do that. So the government people have to see that in their cultural budgets, which of course are going down also, that there's a place for jazz at the table, at least a place. And that's a governmental thing, country by country. But that's very important. So you have two prongs: young, government, to take care of the music, and the practical realities of being a musician. So this is a big scan that I'm talking about. But this is what I think is the responsibility of jazz education in our time.
Thank you, Dave.
Always a pleasure. Good luck. Have a good meeting. Charles.